Before we get started, I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. So if you can hear me, if someone can hit the raise hand button for me, I would appreciate it. Make sure that I got people going. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody. So also with me today, I have Jai Musselman. He's our business development manager out of Florida, and he's going to be monitoring the question and answer box for me this morning. So if you have any questions as we're running through this, we're going to cover a lot in a short period of time. But for those of you who have any questions, go ahead and hit them in that box, and Jai will answer them, and then we'll stop at the end of this. We'll have some time at the end to field questions as well at the end of the presentation. So with that, like I said, don't hesitate. Go ahead and answer them, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I think I'm sharing my screen. So first, let me introduce myself. My name is Brian Qualls. I am the National Business Development Manager for Unique Lighting Systems. I've been with the company now just going on 9 years. It'll actually be 9 years in June. And prior to coming to Unique Lighting, I was a landscape architect. In fact, I still am a landscape architect. I still carry my license in Arizona. And really, when I was a landscape architect, I've worked just about every type of firm you can think of, and worked on just about any type of project, from a small residential all the way up to DOT type projects. So I've been in the business a long time, went to school for it. It's really just been part of who I am ever since I thought about what career I wanted to get into. The reason why I bring that up and kind of let you know where I come from gives you an idea of where I come from, right? So my classes, my trainings, they all kind of come from more of that designer point of view, kind of from at the drafting table, so to speak, point of view. But I also have been in the field for many years, so I kind of get to marry those two together. So I get a little bit different take on the trainings and kind of how things are going, and that just gives you a little bit of background of where I come from. So let's talk kind of generally, what is low voltage lighting? So I know everyone, it's kind of funny to bring this slide up, but really we're talking about a system that's based on 12 volts versus 120 volts. Now, the reason why I kind of talk about this is mainly that we've got a lot more liberties on the 12-volt system than we do with the 120-volt. We don't have to bury the wire as deep. In fact, we don't even have to put the wire inside cable. We get a lot more. It's a lot more easier to install from the standpoint of landscape contractors can install it. We don't need to be licensed electricians. Landscape architects and designers can design it. You don't have to be an electrical engineer. Gives us a lot more flexibility in the landscapes, and we get a lot more just design aspects out of low voltage lighting versus line voltage. Now since LED has really kind of become the mainstream and in the marketplace, LED has changed low voltage dramatically to the point that we can do a heck of a lot more with low voltage lighting systems than we ever could with halogen, and it's a more economical, a lot easier way to get light into certain spaces. And what I kind of liken it to is that since these systems are so much simpler, I mean, we've all been out there. You drive around and you see a nice big beautiful entry sign, whether it's an HOA or into a shopping center, what have you, and the lights are busted or they're twisted or they're just not working. And mainly it's just because it's a more complicated system. You got to get an electrical contractor out there. The fixtures have a lot more complexity to them, to where it's just a lot simpler to run everything as a low voltage system. So why do we light? The biggest thing that I tell all my designers, I tell all my contractors when we're talking to homeowners or talking to property managers, is that these homeowners and property managers are spending a lot of money, whether on landscape architects to design the system or design the landscape, or the contractor to install it, or the maintenance crew to maintain it. It's just, they're very well kept spaces, and if we don't light them, they only get used 50% of the time. So, put things in perspective, in the wintertime here, when I wake up in the morning and go to work, it's still dark out. And then when I come home at the end of the day, it's still dark out. And if I didn't have lights in my backyard, I wouldn't really get to enjoy my backyard much in the evening or in the winter times. Now out here in Arizona, we get so hot in the summertime, we only really go outside when the sun goes down. So, if I didn't have light in my backyard, I wouldn't even get to enjoy my backyard in the summertime either. So really, by adding light and lighting the space, we're extending the use of that space well beyond just the daylight hours, and also to help draw people out of the homes, and it's just a way to kind of extend the use of that space. Now, the argument I make to just about everybody is everybody wants light. Every homeowner, every property manager, they want and need lighting in their space, but they usually don't know how to get it, or they don't have the vocabulary on how to ask for it. And so what do? Is they go down to the big box store and they find, oh, hey, look at these solar lights, perfect. I can put these in the ground and I don't have to worry about it. They don't realize that they're getting a very poor choice, that there's so many better options out there beyond what you see. If they decide that, hey, I'm going to get a little bit more sophisticated, I don't want to use the solar lights, they'll buy a kit. Oh, here's a package of 4 lights with the transformer and the wire. All I got to do is put these in. I'm a little more sophisticated, but then you get something that's still not quite there. Or if they got a pretty good tax return this year, they'll buy the pack that's got 7 or 8 lights. It's got 8 lights. It's got the transformer. It's got the, I'm ready to go. And even after this gets installed, you kind of have this spooky, scary house that's got some dark spots and corners and things like that, versus this is the level we want to get to. This is where we want to design to and install to, right? And really, I'm kind of taking the philosophy when it comes to design that I'm not trying to use objects in my landscape as targets, and I'm going to light this and I'll light that. I'm trying to create an atmosphere in the entire space. So this is a nice, comfortable space, and what I tell everyone that takes my courses, everyone that I work with, my friends, family, everyone, that if I don't get any compliments on my lighting design, then I know I've done a good job. Because basically, people they're just comfortable in that space, and they don't realize that, hey, there's lights, that are making this look as wonderful as it is. Oftentimes, if it's a new space or I'm doing a nighttime demonstration, I'll actually shut the lights off, because then people go, holy cow, was it really this dark out here before we lit it? And then plug them back in, and then wow, this looks really nice. So this is the goal we're striving for. It's more of an atmosphere rather than just trying to pick objects and light those in the landscape. But Brian, we're not electrical engineers. We're not electrical lighting designers. I hear this all the time. And in fact, when I was a landscape architect, I used to say this. And if you are doing landscape design, whether it's, like I said, on the drafting table, through AutoCAD, or you're doing it out in the field, then you already know how to do lighting design. I can tell you that from my perspective, lighting design is one of the things that gets missed just about by everybody, because it's not really taught anywhere. I mean, there really aren't, other than classes like this that manufacturers give, there aren't very many. They don't teach it in design school. You don't really teach it. I don't see it taught in landscape architects' offices, unless there's someone that's taking it on and doing it themselves. But the big part about it is a lot of the guys that are really good, that are quote unquote lighting designers, are pretty much self-taught. And so I kind of go back and take a look at lighting design. It's no different than landscape design, right? In landscape design, we don't go out and buy 50 specimen trees and just kind of place them all over the property. We take those specimen trees, and those are our focal points, and we design highs and lows, and we create transitions, and we're trying to move people through a space or move people into a space, create a comfortable space. We're doing the same thing with lighting design. And in fact, if you look at all the elements from your landscape design, the focal points, the transitions, the gathering places, that will tell you where you need to put the lights. Now, a lot of people get real nervous when trying to do a lighting design, and the biggest thing that I can tell, as big advice I can tell you, is that just remember the lights can always be adjusted. It's not like an irrigation system where I'm putting in, big rotors, and I got to get them pretty dang close to perfect because they're underground, and boy, it's a pain in the neck to dig that thing up and move it even, 1.5 feet. Where with lights, we're not setting them in concrete, we're not, putting them permanent in place, that we can always, if we need to, pick them up and move them. Or a lot of our fixtures have an adjustable knuckle, so then you can adjust the beaming, kind of which direction it's pointing, and then you can change all the bulbs, all the LEDs inside of it. So if it's too bright, you can add a dimmer bulb or put a lens on it. So my point is that there's options beyond what you design on paper. There's options beyond what you put in the ground during the day, but always be adjusted. and you can always, get it dialed into where you want it. I've been doing this a long time, and to this day, I still find myself at times walking on a site going, that didn't quite work exactly the way I wanted it to. So I either got to put a different bulb in or a lens. So I'm still constantly adjusting from my design off the drafting table to what happens out in the field until I get it dialed in the way I want it. So creating a lighting design, the big thing that I look at are the top two bullets on this slide is I want to eliminate black holes and I want to eliminate glare. So if you're thinking about a landscape design a lot like a irrigation design, especially like a spray overhead irrigation, rotors or things like that, is, in irrigation, I want to make sure I'm eliminating dry spots, and I want to make sure that I'm, eliminating or reducing any overspray. Well, I do the same thing with lighting. Black holes is your dry spots, and your glare is your overspray. Now, much like overspray, I can't control 100% of it on an irrigation design, but the same thing with the glare. You're never going to control 100% of glare, but as long as you're aware of it and you know where it's at, you can reduce it and minimize it to the point to where it's not uncomfortable. What I tell everyone is it doesn't matter if you've got a 10-light job or a 110-light job. If you've got one light that's glaring the whole scene, it's going to ruin that scene. So as an example, I like to give everybody, if you think about that backyard barbecue that you've been to, and the sun goes down, and that homeowner, maybe it's you, that has that big, bright floodlight on the corner of the house that's lighting the entire backyard. And then you, as a guest, you're spending your whole night making sure that when you're having conversations, your back is turned to that, and the person you're talking to, they're facing that glare, and you're not. Well, now imagine if, it's not one light, but it's 15 lights, and they're all kind of got glares. As you're walking through this backyard, it's just going to be an uncomfortable space. So you want to make sure you control that glare as much as possible. So flipping through some pictures here, and really what you want to do is kind of, again, create that portrait. Now, I like to stop on this slide here, and a lot of people have heard me say this, and I'll say it, every day, is I'm not a huge fan of path lights. And not that they don't do a good job as far as their performance. Their performance is phenomenal. What I don't like about them is that they become targets in the field. Now, many designers who are unsure of themselves, the first thing they want to do is put in path lights and bollards, light all the pathways. It's super easy to do. And the hard part with that is, like I said, they are now targets. So imagine if this had path lights, on either side going all the way up. If, throughout the day, they're going to get hit with line trimmers, extension cords, garden hoses, soccer balls, skateboards, whatever you can think of, and then they all get kind of knocked out of alignment. They're out of place, and you're constantly straightening hats or straightening stems or fixing stakes and things like that. So for me, I'd much rather take the budget I would spend here and light the walls, light the house as much as I can to create that ambient light. So now if you've never been to this house before and you're walking up this walk, you know that, hey, there's no trip hazards here. Yep, it's a little wet, so I got to be careful. You've got enough light that you can see getting yourself up to that destination. Same thing here. Super easy for someone to want to come in here and put 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 path lights or 5 bollards versus, again, let's take that ambient light, light that wall, light the tree here, and again, create enough light that, I can see that, hey, there's a bench here, I'm not going to stub my toe on it, or if someone's walking in a direction that, I can comfortably walk past them without them being a shadowy figure in the night. So kind of where I like to put my budget and like to put my design. Now, for those of you landscape designers, landscape architects that are out there, we here at Unique Lighting, we now have IES files for all of our, I shouldn't say all, for most of our fixtures. We're constantly adding more and more every week. So for those of you who are doing a design that need that photometric data, we have it available to you. I'm working on getting it on our website. It's not there yet. So unfortunately, right now, in order to get any IS data you have to email me, and then I'll get you the files that you need. These are great for, like I said, you can give it to your electrical engineers, and they can tell you how many foot candles we're putting on the sidewalk. And recently, I've been giving it to designers who are incorporating into their 3D models. So when they're putting lights on their 3D models, they're getting the actual photometric data out of our fixtures when they do the nighttime scenes. So that's available to you. Like I said, for right now, you have to contact me, but we're working on getting that on our website. Now, this photo here is probably one of my favorite pictures in the deck, just because, number one, this is all low voltage all the way through. Number two, we're able to just light the front, light this walk, make it a very comfortable scene, even though this isn't, the focal point of the whole project, but this is a super nice just entry without having to put any bollards or any path lights along the way. So we're uplighting the palm trees, and then we're lighting the wall, bouncing all that light, creating this nice comfortable spot. So that way if someone were to walk through that gate there, again, it's not a big shadowy figure. I don't have path lights I'm constantly maintaining, especially with, turf, and then when these vines grow, there's going to be a lot of landscape here that needs to be maintained, so I want to keep the path lights to a minimum. And then downlighting. Downlighting is probably the most important aspect that's out there. You know what? Hold on a second here. Oh, yeah. So when we're looking at it as we go through with the downlighting, is that I'm able to put the lights up here in the trees, and then what happens is I'm creating a nice effect, pool of light down the ground. So, a situation like this where I don't have any hardscape, I don't have any area where I can put bollards that are a defined edge, using downlights gives you that nice effect. What we're doing here, we're using a higher Kelvin temperature up in this range. So that way now I'm giving that silverly, kind of full moon effect on the ground. So what's happening here is that this is given this property a full moon 365 days a year. Now imagine if we didn't do the downlights, then this is a perfect candidate for someone to put a big floodlight right here and try and light this whole area. And if by doing that, this just wouldn't be a comfortable spot to want to come out here and have a get together or have a little kind of garden party, if you will, if we've got this big spotlight in the corner. And then again, I tell all kinds of landscape architects and designers that we often call this landscape lighting, and in reality, it's low voltage. So look beyond doing the landscapes. Look at kind of where you've got some walls or some entryways, even lighting up underneath roofs or gazebos and things like that, so you can kind of create a nice atmosphere. So if you're looking at this scene here, I've created enough light with the low voltage that I've got a nice comfortable atmosphere right here at the porch. But I can come out here in the evening, sit and have a nice glass of wine, and not feel like I'm on display. And if you kind of look at this picture again, you can see when they built the house, they put these can lights up here that I can tell you are basically made you feel like you were on display when they were turned on. You were sitting out here. So we never really used the spot until we turned those lights off and created this scene. Now put these back on a switch so that way they become task lighting. So if someone's coming to the door, I can turn that on and see who it is. Or with this day and age right now where everything's having to get delivered, I can turn that on for the delivery drivers, and that way they can see the steps and then be comfortable. So again, I'm trying to create more of that atmosphere rather than just targeting trees and shrubs and things like that. And then of course always light the gazebo. These are easy. This is a good focal point, and this is a good place to light. And then I like to show this picture here mainly because as you can see that path lights do perform extremely well. So you can see the performance we're getting out of these. But because of this nice walk here, I'm strategically placing these where there's only need for 3. I'm using the ambient light from the landscapes around it. But as I'm placing these, I got this one close to a boulder, so it's got some protection. This one's pulled off the walk a little bit. I'm not putting this one directly on the edge of the grass. I'm giving it some room, so that way I'm not lining this with 3 or 4 path lights on either side. I've got these strategically placed, and now you can see this is a well-lit walkway as we're going from A to B. So how do we get to that point? So let's first talk about the fundamentals of light. So I've kind of broken it down into kind of 4 or 5 bullets here of how to create that lighting portrait. So first, what you want to do is lay out your concept. So again, I'm going to come at this more from a kind of drafting table point of view, but this can translate to when you're out in the field. So what you want to do is take a look at your property. So I've got this example here where this is the house. This here is the street, guest house here, and he's got a big, big front porch. So when you're kind of looking at this, it's really easy to start laying this out and say, okay, wait a minute, okay, here's the entry, so I've got these trees, I want to make sure I'm lighting that. This is a central location, I want to make sure I'm lighting, that area there. I've got these framing the front, and then as you start kind of picking the landscape apart, you can see how easy it is to start placing fixtures as you go through. And again, I know I'm kind of picking these as targets, but this gets you started. The one thing I hear from a lot of designers is I don't know where to start. I don't know how to get going. So easily just pick the easy spots as I kind of identified here. And the other thing is too is make sure you incorporate the home, patio, any structures that are out there. So if you kind of take a look at this, you get a lot of bang for your buck by lighting the home. So if you kind of use your mind's eye a little bit and look back and say, hey, wait a minute, what if I only lit these 1, 2, 3 trees and then the steps going up? This house would be really dark, and all you would really have is the bright light over the porch. So this front door would be standing out. Looks like there might be another one over here, and this side door would be standing out, to where all this in between would be that dark, shadowy figure that we kind of showed earlier in the slide. So I usually like to start with the house and then work my way out. That way, then it's just easier to be able to, work that budget a little bit more. That coming back and saying, hey, by adding 1, 2, if we light the house by adding 1, 2, 3 trees, it's easy to add that into to add that into the budget than it is by saying, okay, I'll light these trees. Oh, we're going to add, 10 more lights on the house. So again, I always like to start on the house and work our way out. And for those of you that are trying to sell lighting and going out there, I can tell you a lot of people that are doing the competition, they don't think about it. So think about it from the point of view of your homeowner that I was telling you before. They want lights, but they don't know how to vocabulary it. They don't know how to ask for it. And so more oftentimes than not, when I come out on a job site, I'm trying to pitch lighting to somebody new, and I'm looking at the house. More often than not, they'll say, oh, well, we never thought about the house. Oh, well, no one's ever talked to us, but everyone just kept focusing on the trees, and well, that's a great idea. And when you got a house that's got a lot of interest, with different textures and things like that, it really draws your customer in, draws your client in to decide, yeah, you're right, we need to light this house. We need to put more on the structure and including the landscape. And then when you're done with your lighting the house, choose the focal points. And focal points, there's really no hard and fast rule of what, what a focal point is in your landscape, right? So it's either gazebo, statues, fountains, it could be the front door, it could be even just a barbecue area or a fire pit area. Just, make sure you're lighting that focal point. You want to institute rhythm and continuity. So, where this situation, rather than trying to put one big light to light this whole wall, you can kind of see where we're following the rhythm, and that rhythm's following through to the fireplace, through the landscape. So I'm, again, trying to create comfort as I go through my designs. And it doesn't necessarily have to be, anything that is hard and fast on a wall. So we're creating that rhythm again with these 5 palm trees that are out front of the house as we go through. And then I tell everyone, if you're ever lucky enough to ever have a mermaid statue in any of your landscapes, make sure you light it up. And this is the one thing I really like showing this photo here for many reasons. Number one, this is actually done from a demo. So we do have demo kits that kind of help in a number of ways. The first way is it's real light and real locations. So the demo kit is our lights already wired up that you can take out to a customer's or a client's house, and you can show them what their house will look like with lighting. It's a lot better than trying to show them pictures of other projects you've done or other projects you've seen, that when you're showing, basically a test drive of the lighting on their house, goes a long way. The other thing that it does, it helps you kind of confirm your design a little bit. Like I mentioned before, there's still times when I go out there and go, that's not quite, doing exactly what I wanted. The demo kit will help you kind of confirm that, hey, your thoughts, your philosophies are going to work, or things you need to tweak. So what's nice about this is fountains are really, really tough to light, and especially something like this where it's got an elevated bowl. Because if I'm trying to light from the ground, I can't get that light to bend over the bowl. So actually what would happen is if I were light from the ground here, I'd be casting tons of shadow on the mermaids. So what we've done on this is we've actually, if you can see, we've actually put lights up in the trellis here to downlight that, to give us that, you know, good look as we're going through. The other thing is, if I was lighting down here trying to light up, no matter where I stood in this scene, I'm going to get hit by glare. So if I've got a light over here and I'm standing over here, that light's going to glare me in the face, and, you know, vice versa. If there's light over here, I'm standing over there. If I've got it on four corners, there's at one point where I'm going to stand, I'm going to be hit by glare. So by elevating that and shining it down, I'm also reducing, lighting the fountain, but I'm also reducing the possibility of glare hitting the observer right in the face. So after you kind of lay out your concept and kind of get where things are going to go, you need to start laying out your viewpoints. So back to our example house here, where, you know, you're looking at, you know, where are my viewpoints? How is this house going to be viewed? The first thing that everybody does, whether, again, you're doing it from the drafting table or you're doing it out in the field, is I want to know how this thing's going to look from the street. This is going to be my portfolio project. I'm going to put this as the front page of my web page. I want to make sure this looks great. And you go out there and you do a wonderful job as you start lighting up, you know, from this viewpoint. But the problem is the homeowner likes to sit on his porch in the evenings, and if you're only lighting it from this viewpoint, from his point of view, everything on the backside is going to be dark. So as you start to look at this and you realize, well, wait a minute, if I only put, you know, one light on each of these trees on this side, he's not going to see anything. So you start to look at the point, well, maybe this tree and this tree here, maybe they get 2 lights or potentially even 3. So that way I'm getting all the views from it as we go through. Then as we start looking at this even more, we've got this roundabout in the center that's now got, you know, 360-degree views, or from all 4 corners, as we're looking at it. So now maybe this tree is getting 3, maybe 4 lights as we're looking at it. Now I can tell you this is a real project, and at the end of the day, this center tree ended up getting 8 lights. So we did 4 up lights and 4 down lights. So again, now he's got that full moon effect 365 days a year. He likes to entertain, obviously. He's got, you know, kind of this guest parking lot. So rather than putting big old spotlights here in the corners to light that, we're using the moonlight from the tree and kind of from this, you know, these other trees to create a nice soft glow that someone can come in, comfortably park, not trip over everything, and then make it to the front door. So viewpoints are important. So kind of walk yourself through as if you're the homeowner, what am I going to see? And that'll tell you, you know, how many lights you're going to need per feature, whether it's a tree or a fountain or anything else that's out there. So the other thing when you're laying out a concept is it gets real easy to go out there and go light all the way through. And you know, it's easier for me to talk about this stuff, especially since, you know, I'm talking about no budget. Now I know everything's got a budget and we got to stay within that. But, you know, with that as well, it's easy to take a plan or walk on there and go, we're going to like this, we're going to like that, we're going to go through, and then boom, we've turned this thing into a really bright spot in the darkness. But, you know, the point I'm trying to make is there's areas you don't need to light or don't want to light. And the big question you got to ask yourself is, you know, should I light this? I had a project that comes to mind every time I do this presentation that it was a beautiful backyard, and off in the corner there was a tool shed. And, you know, it was kind of flanked by trees. It wasn't the best looking tool shed. It wasn't horrible, but, you know, it was one of those things that at night I don't think I needed to highlight it. So from the viewpoint of where their gazebo was, that was, you know, shooting that you could see this tool shed, we purposely kind of lit around it so that way that tool shed blended back into the night. So then at night you didn't see it. It wasn't a dark, scary corner, but we didn't highlight it either. So there's often times where there's things in the scene or in the yard that we kind of want to go ahead and make it disappear at night, and then, you know, you either light around it or don't light that area and kind of create more of a softer scene in that. So a lot of the times, like I said, we get a little overzealous and light everything, but there's often times we want to backlight off and not draw attention to that area. Now here's kind of an example of how we want to lay things out and go through it, is that I want to kind of create a 3-dimensional look. So when I was saying, hey, we want to go through and light everything and get really crazy, you know, this is a great example of where I want to have my highs and my lows that I want to focus on kind of the front door. So this is an example where my focal point is the front door. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that if you've never been to this house and I invite you over for a dinner party, there's no question that, hey, there's the front door. This is where I need to be led to. And then we soften the edges as we move out. That's still bright enough for the homeowner to enjoy, and be able to pull into the front yard, into this car corral here, but without having to overly light this place and make it one big flat scene. So the next bullet here is kind of identify your visual objectives. So basically the visual objectives are established by the viewpoint. So what I mean by that is, what is it that I want to be looking at, whether it's a specimen tree or, again, a fountain. And oftentimes that visual objective comes from inside the house. And so this is a great example where this was the homeowner's office, and, kind of working in here, that if we didn't light this tree, from even the backside here, then this would be a big, dark, scary tree, and every night when he'd come into his office, he'd shut his blind. So that visual objective oftentimes is coming from an office, master bedroom, especially a dining area, the kitchen, where people spend most of their time. So you take a look when you're looking at the plan, or if you're at the house, kind of ask the questions is, where do you spend most of your time? Because I want to make sure at night I'm bringing that visual objective into the home so it's not super dark at night. When I bought my house, I actually have a dedicated office, and it's got windows on 3 sides. And when we bought it, there was no lights here. And when I would come in and work in the evenings, it was just all my windows were dark. So I'd actually close the blinds, and I kind of felt like I was in a fishbowl at night. And then when I started adding landscape and lights, now I can we've strategically placed a lot of our trees to where they're visible during the day. So I want to make sure they're visible at night. So now in the evenings, when I'm working in the office, all my blinds are open because my outside is actually brought into the office by having, the trees lit. I've got, olive trees all the way around that look wonderful at night, and that's that visual objective from inside the house. So here's a list of visual objectives. The biggest thing is that it's not always necessarily an object. Your visual objective is often leading people from space to space. As if I'm leading someone that lives in this, this is a close-up of that house where, leading the driver up the driveway into his car corral here. So again, no path lights. I've got enough light that he can see if the kids left the skateboard out on the driveway, and then leading him from the street into his garage there. Same thing with this one. This house has got a little bit of an interesting feature to it from the aspect that this house was a remodel. So this here is the garage. And so when the house was originally built, the garage door was on this side. So the owner actually flipped the garage door to the back and then created this nice patio out front, and then used the original driveway as his guest parking. So again, if you were coming to this house, you had never been here before, and you're invited to a dinner party, that I'm going to park in this guest parking, walk through this half gate, and then go straight to the front door. So I'm creating that visual objective from the guest parking, leading the guests, all the way to the front door to be able to get into the house. And same thing here. Sometimes the destination is the visual objective. Imagine if this was, at a cabin, in the woods, and at night you wanted to go for a stroll. Well, if we didn't have this path lit, and there's really no spot to comfortably put path lights, that at night I'd never go down there. I mean, maybe I'd send my wife down there and have her call up and tell me that it's safe. But you get my point, where the visual objective here is just getting us to the destination down to the bottom. Now, oftentimes, we can take a big, small space like this and make it look or feel bigger than it is. So what's nice about this, you can see, we're using path lights sparingly. We're limited, with our property line fence here. We're lighting the fence. We're doing a wonderful job. But again, I'm now lighting on the other side of that fence. So again, if you kind of use your mind's eye, if you think about it, if we didn't light any of these trees on the other side of this fence, it would be pitch black. And be, at that point where you start to ask the question, well, what's on the other side of that fence? Is it the desert? Is it the ocean? Is it the abyss? What do I have over there? So by, adding lights to the outside of the fence, it kind of brings that another, limit visual objective into the scene, makes the spot feel a lot bigger. Now, again, I know, this is easy for me to say, there's realities to this that, the owner of this house isn't going to pay to put lights on his neighbor's house, or, vice versa. But my point is again, when you're working on a project like this, ask the question, because there's oftentimes you'll be surprised at what you get. So I've got two scenarios that I can kind of talk to. Is one, we were working on a project similar to this, and we had the property line wall, and there were some trees that were just perfect to light to kind of bring into our project. So the homeowner actually called his neighbor and said, "Hey, we want to light a couple of your trees. Do you mind?" And the neighbor got real intrigued, and by the time we got done, we now turned one project into two. So now not only had we lit the project, that we were actually contracted to do, but by asking if we could light these trees, this homeowner decided, hey, well, I want lights at my house as well. So we were able to expand that into two. The other example that I had was actually in Tucson, Arizona, and similar deal. It was a small backyard. There was a property line wall that cut the deal, and there was some really nice saguaro cactus on the other side. When I asked the question, it turned out that the homeowner actually owned the property on the outside of that fence, on the outside of that wall, and he had actually built that wall because he was a little bit in a flood zone. He was doing it to control, when we have monsoons, to control that flood water. And he says, but I actually own all that property out there. So we were able to light the saguaros and just create it for a nice, a better looking scene than he would have had if we were confined by that property line wall. So point of my two stories is that it never hurts to ask, because more often than not, you're going to be surprised that you can actually go ahead and light that. And then if you're forward thinking, or you're thinking, bigger than everyone else, it's going to help you, kind of A, become a top-notch designer, and B, get the job over any of your competition, because you're thinking beyond, again, I'm going to light this tree, I'm going to light this side, I'll light that fence. You're putting yourself to that elevation that, hey, you are a top-notch designer, and we go through. So transitions. Transitions are extremely important. Again, what I see as far as a lot of mistakes that are out there is people, again, are using the fixtures, or the trees and objects in the landscape as targets, to where we're kind of chopping that landscape up, and we're not creating transitions. So the eye, if you think about it, your eye will just jump to the brightest spot in any room or any landscape that you are entering, or that you're standing in. So as you kind of go through and you look at something like this, is one glare bomb. This is what I was talking about before, where you get one light that's a big glare, that will just ruin any job that's out there. So I've given this presentation a number of times, and I know this slide comes up, and every time I'm looking right at that light. Now imagine if this was, a real situation where you were walking up this path. It would be hard for you not to focus on that light. Then once your eyes start to adjust, you start to realize, oh, hey, there's landscaping. Oh, hey, there's a couple guys standing back there, that you don't realize that, you're really ruining the whole job. Now, we kind of adjusted this, for this photo to exaggerate for emphasis. But this is a good example of trying to, use too few lights. This is one light trying to light this whole hedge versus taking a less bright light and spreading it out 2, 3, even 4. And then again, I can control that glare. Rather than trying to adjust this to light more than it can, I'm now going to use smaller lights and adjust that glare by controlling it, by using it with more smaller fixtures all the way around. Same thing here. Rather than trying to do 2, I probably could have done it with 3 or 4, and then not try and create so much glare on that fountain. So controlling that glare not only is just proper placement, but a lot of our fixtures have several pieces that we can add to it. So glare control shields, the shrouds, these hex bolt baffles certainly control a lot of glare. They snap on and off each of our fixtures, and this will help you. So if you're by a walkway or a pathway, this will help glare from the outside angles. Now, if you're standing directly in front of it, you're still going to get the glare. So if this is pointing directly at you, it doesn't control that, but it will control a lot of it from the edges and the corners. It's a very useful tool that's included with most of our fixtures. And then lenses as well. So the biggest one that I use a lot of is the frosted lens. This really helps reduce glare, and it reduces the hot spots. Basically takes that light and just spreads it out wider, and kind of knocks that glare down a little bit. The blue lens, which we still use to this day, gives the light more of that silver look. It doesn't make it blue. It makes it more silver. So that fixture or that photo we showed you with the downlights that had the moonlight effect, we were using a higher Kelvin temperature LED, but we also put a blue lens in that to help give it that real silver look to make it give it that moonlight effect. Now, the biggest thing I hear a lot of people say is, well, I don't want too many lights. I don't want this thing to be too bright. I don't want it to be, look like Disneyland, so to speak, or look like a used car lot. And what a lot of people don't realize is having more lights doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be more bright. Having more lights, actually the opposite of that is true. Having more light actually gets things to appear less bright. So a big example I can give you that's really simple is if we were all in a room together, and let's say I was able to make it really dark and turn the lights out and flash one flashlight in that room, holy cow, that light would appear super bright. But if I all of a sudden turn the lights on in that room, open up the blinds, and bring some sunlight in, and then turn that flashlight on, it doesn't appear to be as bright because now it's got the other lights kind of working with it. Same thing happens in landscape. So if you take a look at the picture I've got on the screen now, where I've got this gazebo or this pool house, if you will, that's perfectly lit. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's become a beacon in the night. So beyond just the glare from the fixture, I've got this pool house that's this beacon in the night as compared to something like this, where now I'm adding more light around it, and now this gazebo appears to be less bright. I haven't reduced the amount of fixtures, I haven't dimmed anything, but by adding more lights around it, I've now, created more of a scene rather than having this floating pool house in the dark. And then what this is doing as well is I'm now creating more visual interest. I can now see, and I can kind of go back, how dark our lounge area was. Now I've got a nice lounge area that I can sit and have a nice conversation. I've brought some visual interest in the pool to where now I've got some reflectivity, a little mirror lighting. I've added the tree, and then this back wall. So now I don't have to worry about this big dark spot, this again dark hole, dry spot in the back of my scene. And then the big thing, as you can probably tell as we were going through this, is the levels of light. So we've broken it down to make it simple to basically 3 levels of light. That's what gives you that depth, kind of gives you that where it's not completely flat. So here's kind of a quick shot of what a level 1, 2, 3 looks like. So your level 1s are your low levels. You get a lot of that from ambient light, and even if you want to use some low-level path light, that gives you your level 1. So again, I can walk from this point to that front door, realize, hey, there's a puddle here. I'm going to walk around it. It's not overly lit to where I can see every crack in the walk. Level 2 is kind of my transition areas, or the spots that I just want to fill in so I don't have the big, dark, spooky areas. Then level 3, that becomes your focal point. That's your brightest level, and that's where I want to make my focal points as we go through. Generally, when you're designing and you're laying the stuff out, you tend to work backwards. So you want to kind of make it easy, at least for myself. I'll work on my focal points in my level 3s and get those lit, and then find my level 2s and light those areas, and then eventually just fill in the blanks at the level 1s as I get done. And by achieving that, it's really just like I said, it's your fixture placement using different wattages as you go through the different fixtures, and then by using those lens techniques and by the hexel baffle. So again, the pixels split apart. Here's my level 3. Out here on the edges is my level 2. And the walk out front is my level 1. So level 3 again, so it's really different for each scene. You can kind of see now where I'm now getting that, level 1, 2, 3. I'm not going to pick through each one of these as we go through. Now let's go ahead and talk about the different types of lighting that are out there. So of course, uplighting is basically exactly what it says in the name. Take going from the ground and lighting straight up. So front lighting, this is the one that everybody does. It's kind of like I mentioned before, what people are doing. So I'm going to take a bullet light, find a target. Ooh, that tree, let's light it. Boom, put that in. What happens is now we create hot spots. We don't get the light to get the full performance up in the top of the tree. We don't get really good kind of performance out of one me is on every project I work on, every tree of any substance will get at least 2 lights. So this is a great example here. You can see where I'm putting 2 lights on each of these palm trees. And what's happening is I'm lighting up the tree and I'm creating this striping. So by having the light on either side, okay, I'm getting notes that we can't hear the audio. How are we doing right now? Muffled. Okay. I can switch. Let me switch. See if I can switch here. Is it better now? Sounds like we're getting better. Okay. Apologize for that. Okay, I'm gonna kind of jump back here. I'm not sure where I lost you guys, but just about every tree that I design, everything that I go through, will get 2 fixtures. Anything of substance, a little small, little tiny trees, of course, but being a little bigger, we'll always do 2 lights per tree. And the reason why, as you kind of see here in the scene, is what's happening with these palm trees is I've got 2 lights in every single tree. And what I'm doing, I'm creating what we call the striping right down the middle. And then I'm getting great interest. I'm creating kind of a 3-dimensional look for this tree as I go through. The other great thing about that is you look at this for a second is, this is the pathway from, the front of the house out to the street and vice versa. If I were to only put 1 light per tree, let's say I put them on this side, the side that we're looking at, if I were to walk back up this way, every single one of these trees from this viewpoint walking up would be dark, would work as well. So I'm trying to light 2 trees as we go through. Here's some examples of some of the fixtures that I would use, bullet lights or well lights. Backlighting, this is kind of taking that. This doesn't get used very often, and mainly because everybody wants to front light. But what's great about this is you can see it really brings some visual interest, again, to these palm trees here. Now, this is a demo, so you can see I've got these are demo lights out here, but we were kind of forced on this project here because here's the hard edge. I couldn't even front light these if I wanted to. I didn't have the room. But as you can see by backlighting them, what I'm doing is I'm actually bringing this rock wall into the scene. Now, if I were to front light these, that rock wall would either disappear or would have kind of scary shadows on top of it that just wouldn't give it the interest that we're getting here. Then what would end up happening is I have to add more lights back on the backside and on the wall to bring that in, and then again, I'm now creating a very flat scene. Is that now I'm going to have these front lit, I got these front lit, I got that front lit. I'm not going to have that visual interest, that 3-dimension I've been showing you in all these pictures, so far. And silhouette lighting, again, is the same thing as backlighting, but again, if we've got more of an opaque fixture. We did it on this one because again, this is a fountain. I couldn't get the light to bend over the bowl here, and I didn't have any spot to downlight. So rather than, try and figure out how to build something to downlight this, I figured if we link the back, use the lights inside the fountain with the back of this little silhouette, we have a very, very interesting scene when we got done. And then, okay, I'm getting the audio's not correct. I'm going to try and switch. Bear with me, folks. I'm going to try and switch audio sources. See if I can make it better. Okay, I'm now new audio. How's that? I kind of switched over to a different audio source. Are we any better? Much better. Okay, perfect. So let's back one a little bit here. So the silhouette we talked a little bit about, where we just more opaque. This was a situation where I didn't have any place to downlight, so we lit the wall behind it and gave it a real nice look as we went through there. And then moonlighting we spoke of, but here's some examples of fixtures that you can do for your downlight or moonlighting. So we've got several that'll, attach directly to the tree, and then others that can attach to structures, whether it's going to be gazebos or eaves or anything like that. So this gives you a good example of the fixtures that are out there to get you the moonlighting. We do longer shrouds on the downlights, and that's helped to control the glare. So as we're getting higher up the tree, there's more propensity or more opportunity for that light source to be seen. So the light source being pulled way back here helps control that glare. So that way, when I'm standing down here, unless I'm standing directly underneath that light, I'm not going to see the light source. I'm not going to get any glare as we go through. And there's some examples, other examples of downlighting. Mirror lighting, super easy. A lot of the times you get it quite by accident. As you know, a lot of pools out here. I live in Arizona. There's a lot of pools out here. But again, this kind of makes you to think, well, I don't have much landscape to light. Again, moving out to that house, even looking above, the roof line, lighting chimneys, pillars up on the second story, and then you get this visual interest inside the pool or any lakes or anything that's nearby. Now, as we talked about before, area and path lighting, you can do it where it's very, very strategic. Here's a perfect situation. I really like this photo for the path lights, that there really wasn't much to light to create that ambient light or that atmosphere. So we had to put path lights, but as you can see, we've pulled the lights off the corner. So rather than putting them directly here on the corners, we're pulling them off. So someone coming home with a roller bag, they're going to have a tendency to cut the corner or walking through. This is not going to get, it's less likely to get hit or caught being pulled off the corner like that. Or like we showed before, go ahead and put the fixture right by the boulder or by something to protect it as we go through. Again, some examples of fixtures for the path lights. And then step lighting. I probably get three to five questions a week on how to light steps. And the first thing that people want to do is put that light right there in the riser. And that, this is a perfect example here that may not be the best way to go because, I've got this nice, beautiful cut stone. I don't want to stick a light right in there. So again, by either using path lights, by pulling them off the edge, protecting them with plantings or boulders will give you a good walk. We probably could have used one here or one over here. But again, if you've got walls that are lining the steps, here's some great examples of how to light the steps. So that way you don't have to worry about getting the coordination of your hardscape guy, your concrete guy, to make sure we get those lights in the risers. Or if there's an overhang like this, it kind of gives you a little bit tougher spot to put those in. Plenty of fixtures you can do to light hardscape without having to put lights in the riser. But there's often times where you don't have that option. I don't have anything on the side. I don't have, I can't put, lights on this railing. So again, this works great where you've got the Voyager that goes in there. It's louvered to help prevent that glare because as you can see, we're getting a little bit of glare on that one because that's at our eye level. Imagine if that was open or didn't have a cover on it, or if we went a little bit higher and started looking up into it. At one point, you're going to start to get some of that glare. But here's a good look of it from the top looking down. So again, we're getting great light performance out of it. And one thing I want you to note is that we skipped every other step on this one, which is fine. It's up to you if you want to do every step or every other step, but make sure when you're doing that you're keeping it, the rhythm even. So don't stagger it. So if it's every other one or every second one, don't stagger it because you're going to kind of create a visual trip hazard for anyone that's walking down there. We want to keep that rhythm going all the way through. Graze lighting. This is basically done by taking the fixture, whether it's any one of these, and you're putting it up against the wall versus pulling it back out here. When I put it up against the wall like this, I'm now creating more visual interest. You can see I can see the texture in the wall. And if I were to pull it back out here, I would actually flatten that wall and you wouldn't see as much of the texture. The other thing that you can do by graze lighting is I get a lot more control over where this light goes. So again, if you imagine if I were to put the pulsar out here and shine on this wall, I would get light trespass into that window. And same thing on this. So if there was someone at the door, if I heard a bump in the night and I looked out this window, I'd see nothing but glare. So by pulling it up right against the windows, I can now control that glare, and again, I get the visual interest. Most houses will have a sill, so then I get to use kind of that sill to block a lot of that light from entering the home. And then again, I love showing this picture because again, this is showing the Graze lighting. A simple white stucco wall gives it tons of interest by showing the texture in that stucco by pulling this up. If I were to come back and try and light these plants and light that wall, I wouldn't get this texture. And then again, I'd be putting spooky, scary shadows on the wall, and I'd be getting light trespass inside that window. By putting these on either side, I can control that light and then get a nice look by Graze lighting that wall. And same thing here. If I were to pull these out, I wouldn't get that wonderful texture of that split stone wall. And this is the photo I like to show towards the end of all my presentations, that every single fixture on this picture is low voltage, including the sconces, the downlights over the bar, the under cap lights. So again, with LED and everything we've got going on these days now, we can do a lot more as landscape architects, designers, and contractors, and not have to kick the lighting to someone else and hope they get our vision and hope they get, what we want when we're designing it. More and more of us are designing and building outdoor kitchens like this, and this helps keep you the control all the way down to the lighting. With our smaller transformers, there's places we could tuck them underneath the bar. It gives you that ability to then control the lighting system all the way through. Same thing here. Shepherd's hook are all low voltage. The under cap, of course, the bullet light there. And then I kind of make the argument to anyone, there isn't a space I can't figure out how to light. So this is one of those that you can kind of go through. Well, I can get the under cap lights here. And again, I've got a nice light because I don't have any other spot put lights to make this a nice spot in the evening. And then again, I'll go beyond, and imagine if we didn't light any of these trees on the outside. Sitting out here, what's on the other side of that railing? Is it the desert? Is it the ocean? Is it the abyss? That, again, bringing that interest into this scene, there isn't any, like I said, there's anything I can't light. Now, color, color's all the rage these days. As far as color changing bulbs, we have those available. And there's really from my standpoint, there's really no philosophy I can tell you. Color is up to the homeowner. It's usually more situational. It's more kind of event based. They want it red, they want it blue, they want it green, what have you. They have that ability to change it. But the big thing now is you got to start looking about your color temperature. What I'm talking about is warm white all the way to cool white. So when you're down to 2700, that's that real warm, almost yellow looking light. And as you get to 5000, it's that real stark white, almost blue. So it's a great picture here. As you can see down here, this is all 2700 on the bottom, and this is around 5000 on the top. So you can see how here the whites are a little kind of muted, the blue's a little dingy as compared to this side here where it's just white and crisp. So that's 2700 compared to closer to 5000. What we're finding now is that you get closer to 3000 and above, that really gets your greens to pop. So the 2700s work great on the reds and the earth tones, and then 3000, 4000, 5000 works better on the greens, the blues, yellows, really get those to pop. And what we're finding is that the higher the Kelvin temperature is bringing the color out rather than covering it with color. And if you take a look at this tree here, this is getting some overlap from the 2700. And you can see it's bringing the browns out of this tree and almost kind of making it look dry. Now, this picture's in Florida, so it's not really dry. But you look at this one here with the 5000, you can see all that brown has essentially disappeared, and all the greens have been pulled out. And that's where we're at with that. So we here at Unique Lighting, we've got a tunable bulb that it's a smart device from your phone directly to the bulb that you can go out there and go from 2700 all the way to 6500. And what's nice about that is you don't have to try and pick this out of the box and make sure you're getting the right bulb. Is you put this bulb in all your fixtures, and then you can go out there and on your final walk, fine tune everything to get it to where you like it. It's got a solid state memory, so once you set it, so I'm going to set these at 5000 Kelvin, they will always be at 5000 Kelvin. Even if the power goes out, even if the system gets shut off, you'll never have to readjust them again. So it's a great bulb to kind of get you dialed in to get your scene just perfect. So I know we're at the 1 hour mark and run a little longer than I expected, but this is the last part of the presentation here. We're going to go through some mistakes. And this is exaggerated for emphasis, but this is what I mean by a flat scene. There's no highs and lows, and this is super, super bright glare bomb. Now, I've run into this several times. Oh, but Brian, we imported that from Italy. It's so beautiful. It costs us a lot of money. And I'm not saying we need to get rid of it, but we got to put a very smaller, a dimmer bulb in it, or just dim it down. So now it becomes more of a feature in the landscape rather than trying to light the landscape. And again, here's an example of a line voltage fixture that just stopped working, which I don't even know what it was lighting anyway, and then using improper fixtures to light the path. This is an opportunity where maybe path lights would work, or some tall area lights, or even light this landscape a lot better and using the ambient light to light that path. Now, this is a picture that, a lot of people make the mistake of, again, we are driven by budgets, and I understand that. And a lot of times people will try and take a 10 light or a 15 light job and really try and stretch that, but too wide over that landscape. This is where you want to frame out that landscape and pull things in together. So if you kind of taken, the example of if you've got a room with 4 walls and you've only got a bucket of paint to paint that entire room, you've got 2 choices. One choice is thin that paint out as much as you can and try and paint all 4 walls, or try and find a feature wall or 2 feature walls and paint those to the proper level they need to be to bring visual interest to those walls. Same thing in lighting. This right here, someone tried to thin the paint out and try and light the whole landscape and pick it apart. What's this light doing out here? I'd much rather have taken that light and moved it into this dark, scary corner. And same thing here, where again, if we're looking at the viewpoint, you can't really tell, but this is the seating area and this is kind of the ingress egress to the house. What's this light's only being viewed if I'm out here in the landscape. Much rather better if I moved it to this side of the wall or reused it for something to light this area a lot better. So again, rather than trying to stretch that paint for your whole landscape, let's try and bring it in a little bit tighter and focus on the feature areas. Your customer and your client will be more appreciative of doing that versus trying to spread it out through the whole landscape. Same thing here. We're missing, how to light the steps, very dark, scary area up here. And then again, this is what happens when we focus primarily on the landscape. If this was your house, you invited me over for dinner, I'd pull up into your street, and then I would call you and say, hey, turn your porch, I'm too scared to come to your front door, versus something like that. We're now taking the building and lighting the landscape, and again, creating a very visual interest. I know this is the front door. I'm not scared to walk up and knock on your door and come to the house. And here, this is something where we want to look above our roof line where, hey, this is a great looking picture, and we're putting things in shadow, I'm grazing the walls, I'm creating a real nice interest, compared to adding just a few more lights. The difference between that and that is, 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 more lights. But you can see the huge difference, again, between just buying a kit and then doing what. And again, this is a demo, so you can kind of see, here's my wire that we kind of clipped up there. This is a light that's just sitting on the porch. So you can get the idea when you're doing a demo for a client or a customer that we're going to show them exactly what it's going to look like on their house, and then we can install it from there. And close with us here at Unique Lighting, design can be tough, to start working into it. So we offer a design assistance program. So we will do basically as much or as little as you want. I manage that program. So we do this in AutoCAD. So we'll do fixture locations, hub locations, wire design, voltage drop, anything you want for you in AutoCAD. And then when we're done, we'll send that back to you as a PDF. And what you'll get is, the actual build sheet, with the part numbers and quantities, all the wire design all the way laid out. If you don't have an AutoCAD drawing or a PDF, then we can do it from a Google Earth image like this. We've been doing this a long time. I've been doing this a long time. We can design from just about anything. There's been a few times where we've actually drawn where someone hand sketched their yard and we put a plan together for them. What's super nice about this is I make it look extremely similar to an irrigation plan. So for those of you out there that are installers, that are new to lighting or new to unique lighting, what I tell everyone is the newest guy in your newest crew, if he knows how to read a set of irrigation plans, he can install a lighting system from one of our plans. If you're a designer and you're strictly design, same thing. Once I give you the plan back, you can review this and make sure we're hitting sleeve locations. We've got transformers in the right spot. We're lighting, because it looks so similar to irrigation plans. Very, very easy to read. For those of you who are the designers, like I said, I do this on AutoCAD, so I would just give this back to you as an XREF. You just XREF it right into your set, and then it just folds right in, and then you can print it and send it out. So I tell just about everyone out there, treat me as like a lighting consultant, and we'll take care of everything for you. The best part about this program is that it's complimentary, so there's no charge for it, and there's no obligation. So we're not going to be calling and bugging you every week. Hey, that plan go in, that plan go in. We're here as a service to kind of help our clients and customers out there to get to that next level, to be able to get big solid designs. And finally, when you get the plan done, you'll get a set of transformer calcs. So you'll see how much wattage you're actually using and then what size transformer we're recommending. I hear a lot from landscape architects that, they'll get a phone call from the field, hey, we want to use a smaller transformer, but the landscape architect doesn't know if that can happen or not. So if you engage us, you'll get this type of information that you'll be able to have that information to make that informed decision to say, yeah, we can go smaller, or no, we got to keep it that size because I'm using this much wattage. Or if things change, you can then see if the transformer can change with that field change. So this is available to anyone blank. If anyone wants a copy of this chart, I'll be happy to send it to you as we go through. About 7 minutes over. I apologize for some of the audio issues, but I think we got it straightened out here. This is my contact information. If there's anything that you missed, please shoot me an email and I'll forward it to you. I did record this session, so for those of you who want a recording, please email me, and I'll respond to that email with a link to the recording. You can share that link with anyone that missed today or any colleague you think would benefit from this. And then at that point, if anyone can still hang on, I'm going to be here and answer any questions. If there's any questions, go right ahead and type them in. You got me and Jai here to answer them for you. And if not, like I said, you can always email me or give me a call and let me know if you got any questions after the fact. But I'm going to hang out here for a little bit, just in case you guys are thinking of anything you got questions for. Okay, I'm not really seeing any questions at this point. We're still going to hang on, but I want to thank you all for joining me today and sticking through the muffled sound there. But again, thanks for your time. And again, if there's any questions, we're here to answer them. But other than that, everyone have a great rest of the week, and we'll talk to you soon. Oh, looks like we got a. Sure. If someone's asking for a copy of the presentation, Mike, if you can shoot me an email, that's the easiest way. An email right now, and then I'll respond to that with a link. There's a link to it, and I'll send that out to you. Okay. Well, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. Looks like we have another question over. Thank you. Thanks for the kind words.
we're going to go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and exit now. And like I said, any more questions pop up, email me at my email or give me a call. And, thanks for joining.